Hey guys, welcome to my channel. We're reading A Dog's Journey by W. Bruce Cameron. This is a new book, so I've never read it before. So I'm just going to start reading it. And we're going to read chapter 1 and 2. To all the people who work so hard to rescue, foster, and save animals who find themselves lost in the world. Chapter 1. As I sat in the sun on the wooden dock that jutted out into the pond, I knew this to be true. My name was Buddy, and I was a good dog. The fur on my legs was as black as the rest of me, but down at my paws it had over time become tingled, tinged with white. I had lived a long and full life with a boy named Ethan, spending many lazy afternoons on this very dock, here on the farm, enjoying a swim or barking at the ducks. This was the second summer without Ethan. When he died, I felt a pain inside me much sharper than any other I'd ever felt. Now the pain was less, more like a stomach ache, but I still felt it all the time. Only sleep soothed it away. In my sleep, Ethan ran with me through my dreams. I was an old dog and knew that someday, soon, a much deeper sleep would come, as it had always come for me before. It came for me when I was named Toby in my silly first life, when I had no real purpose but to play with other dogs. It came for me when I was named Bailey, when I first met my boy and loving him became my whole focus. It became for me when I was Ellie, when my job was to work and find people and save them. So when the deeper sleep came for me next at the end of this life as Buddy, I felt sure that I would not live again, and that I had fulfilled my purpose, and there was no reason for me to be a dog anymore. So whether it happened this summer or next, it didn't matter. Loving Ethan was my ultimate purpose, and I had done it as well as I could. I was a good dog, and yet, as I sat there, I was watching one of many children from Ethan's family striding unsteadily towards the end of the dock. She hadn't been walking very long in her life, so every step was a wobble. She wore white puffy pants and a thin shirt. I pictured jumping in the water and pulling her to the surface by that shirt and let out a soft whimper. A child's mother name was Gloria. She was on the dock too, lying motionless on a reclined chair, with bits of vegetables placed on both of her eyes. Her hand had been holding a leash that went to the little girl's waist, but the leash had gone slack in Gloria's hand and was now trailing behind the child as she headed for the end of the dock and pond beyond. As a puppy, my reaction to a limp leash was always to explore, and this little girl's response was just the same. This was Gloria's second life to the farm. The previous time was in the winter time. Ethan had still been alive, and Gloria had handed the baby to him and called him Grandpa. After Gloria left, Ethan and his mate Hannah said the name Gloria out loud many times over many nights. With sad emotions underlining their conversations, they also said the name Clarity. The baby's name was Clarity. Through often, Gloria called her Clarity June. I felt certain that Ethan would want me to watch over Clarity, who always seemed to be getting into trouble. Just the other day, I sat by miserably, while the baby crawled under the bird feeder and stuffed handfuls of fallen seeds into her mouth. It was one of my main jobs to terrorize the squirrels when they did this, but I wasn't sure what to do when I caught Clarity at it, even though I thought that for a child to eat bird seeds was probably against the rule. And I was right about that. When I finally barked a few times, Gloria sat up from where she had been lying down, face down, on a towel, and she was very angry. I glanced at Gloria now. Should I bark? Children often jump into the pond, but never when they were as young as this little girl. Though the way she was going, it seemed inevitably she was going to get wet. Babies were allowed in the water with adults holding them. I looked back towards the house. Hannah was outside, kneeling and playing with flowers up by the driveway. Too far away to do anything. If Clarity fell in the pond, I was pretty sure Hannah would want me to watch over Clarity. It was my new purpose. Clarity was getting closer to the edge. I let out another whimper and a louder one. "Hush," Gloria said without opening her eyes. I didn't understand the word, but the sharp tone was unmistakable. Clarity didn't even look back. When she got to the edge of the dock, she teetered briefly and then fell straight off the front. My nails dug into the wood as I lunged off the side of the dock into the warm water. Clarity bobbled up a little, her little limbs working frantically, but her head was mostly below pond surface. I reached her in seconds, my teeth gently snagging her shirt. I pulled her head out of the water and turned for the shore. Gloria started screaming, "Oh my God, Clarity!" She ran around and waded into the water just as my feet found purchase on the mucky bottom of the pond. "Bad dog," she shouted as she snatched Clarity from me. "You are a bad, bad dog." I hung my head in shame. "Gloria, what happened?" Hannah shouted as she came running up. "Your dog just knocked the baby into the water. Clarity could have drowned." I jumped in to save her, and now I'm all wet. The distress in everyone's voice was very plain. "Buddy," Hannah said. I didn't dare look at her. I wagged my tail a little, and it splashed the surface of the pond. I didn't know what I had done wrong, but clearly I had upset everyone that is, except Clarity. I risked a glance at her because I could sense her straining in her mother's arms, her little hands reaching out towards me. "Buddy," Clarity gurgled. Her pants were spraying water down her legs. I dropped my eyes again. Gloria blew out some air. "Hannah, would you mind taking the baby? Her diaper's all wet, and I want to lie on my stomach so I'll be in the same color on both sides." "Sure," Hannah said. "Come on, buddy." Thankful we had that over with. I leaped out of the water, wagging my tail. "Don't shake," Gloria said, dancing away from me on the dock. I heard the warning in her voice through. I wasn't sure what she was trying to tell me. I shook myself from head to tail, riding my fur of the pond water. "Yuck, no," Gloria shrieked. She sternly lectured me, pointing her finger and using the whole string of words I didn't understand, though she did say "bad dog" a few times. I lowered my head, blinking. "Buddy, come," Hannah said. Her tone was gentle. I followed obediently as we went up to the house. "Buddy," Clarity says, keep saying "buddy." As she reached the front steps to the house, I paused because of the old taste in my mouth. I'd had it before. It reminded me of the time when I pulled a thin metal pan out of the trash that was lined with sweet flour, and after licking it clean, experimentally crunched up in pan itself, the metal tasted bad. So I spat it out. This particular taste, though, couldn't spit out. I sat on my tongue and invaded my nose. Buddy, Hannah stood on the front porch, regarding me. What's wrong? I wagged and bounded up onto the porch, leading the way into the house when she opened the door. It was always fun to walk through that door, whether it was going inside or heading out, because it meant we were doing something new. Later, I stood guard while Hannah and Clarity played a new game. Hannah would carry Clarity to the top of the stairs and then watch while Clarity turned around and went down the stairs and the backwards crawling. Usually Hannah would say, "Good girl," and I would wag my tail. When Clarity got to the bottom step, I would lick her in the face and she would giggle. Then she would raise her arms to Hannah. "Mo." She would beg, "Mo, Grandma, Mo." When she said this, Hannah would lift her up and kiss her, then take her to the top of the stairs and do it again. When I felt satisfied they were safe, I went to my favorite spot in the living room, circled, and laid down with a sigh. A few minutes later, Clarity came over to me, dragging her blanket. She had the thing in her mouth that she chewed on but never swallowed. "Buddy," she said. She dropped to all fours and crawled the last few feet to me and curled up against me, pulling her blanket against herself with the tiny hands. I sniffed her head. Nobody in the world smelt like Clarity. Her scent filled me with a warm feeling that nudged me into a nap. We were still sleeping when I heard the screen door shut and Gloria come into my room. "Oh, Clarity," she said. I barely opened my eyes as Gloria reached down and snatched the little girl away where she's been sleeping. The place where Clarity had been snuggled against me felt oddly cold and empty without her here. Hannah came out from the kitchen. "I'm making cookies," she said. I eased myself to my feet again. I knew that word, wagging. I went over and sniffed Hannah's sweet-smelling hand. The baby was sleeping right against the dog, Gloria said. I heard the words dog, and as usual it sounded as if I had made her mad. I wonder if this meant no cookies. That's right, Hannah said. Clarity cuddled right up against him. I would just prefer if my child not sleep next to a dog. If Buddy had rolled over, Clarity might have been crushed. I watched Hannah for some clue as to why my name had been mentioned. She put her hand to her mouth. All right, of course, I won't let it happen again. Clarity was still asleep, her little head against Gloria's shoulder. Gloria handed the baby to Hannah, then sat with a sigh at the kitchen table. Is there any iced tea? She asked. I'll get you some, holding the baby. Hannah went to the kitchen counter. She got things out, but I didn't see any cookies, though. I could sure smell them, sugary and warm in the air. I sat obediently waiting. I just think it would be better if, when Clarity and I are visiting, the dog stays out in the yard, Gloria said. She took a sip of her drink as Hannah joined her at the table. Clarity was stirring, and Hannah patted her a little. Oh, I couldn't do that. I lay down with a groan, wondering why people always did this, talk about cookies but didn't give any to a deserving dog. Buddy is part of the family, Hannah said. I drowsily raised my head to look at her, but still no cookies. Did I ever tell you how he brought me and Ethan together? I froze at the word Ethan. His name was mentioned less and less often now in this house, but I couldn't hear it pronounced without thinking about his smell or his hand in my fur. A dog brought you together, Gloria replied. Ethan and I had known each other as children. We were high school sweethearts, but after the fire, you know about the fire that crippled his leg. Your son may have mentioned it. I don't know. Mostly Henry just talked about himself. You know how men are. Okay, after the fire, Ethan, there was just something dark inside him and wasn't old enough, mature enough, to help him deal with it. I sensed something like sadness inside Hannah, and I knew she needed me. Still, under the table, I went over and put my head in her lap. She stroked my fur gently, Clarity's bare feet hanging limply above me. Ethan had a dog then, too, a wonderful golden retriever named Bailey. That was his doodle name. I wagged, and hearing the name Bailey and Doodle Dog, whenever Ethan called me Doodle Dog, his heart would be full of love, and he would hug me, and I would kiss his face. I missed Ethan more powerfully in that moment than I had in a long time. And I could feel Hannah missing him, too. I kissed the hand petting me, and Hannah lowered her eyes and smiled at my head in her lap. "You're a good dog, too, buddy," Hannah said. I wagged some more at being called a good dog. It seemed very possible that this whole conversation could lead to cookies after all. Anyways, we went our separate ways. I met Matthew, we were married, and I had Rachel and Sydney, and of course Henry. Gloria made a small noise, but I didn't look at her. Hannah was still stroking my head, and I didn't want her to stop. After Matthew died, I decided I missed my kids, and I moved back to town. And one day when Buddy was probably a year old, he was in the dog park and he followed Rachel home. He had a tag on his collar, and when I looked at it, well, it was pretty surprised to see Ethan's name on it, but not half as surprised as Ethan was when I phoned him. I had been thinking of dropping by to see him, but probably wasn't ever going to do it. Silly, but though hadn't ended well between us, and even though it was a long time ago, I felt, I don't know, shy maybe. Tell me about bad breakups. I've had plenty of those for sure, Gloria snorted. Yes, I'm sure, Hannah said. She looked down in her lap and at her lap and smiled at me. When I saw Ethan after all those years, it was as if we had never been apart. We belonged together. I wouldn't say this to my kids, of course, but Ethan was my one soulmate. And yet, if it hadn't been for Buddy, we might never have met again. I loved hearing my name and Ethan's name spoken out loud, and felt Hannah's love and her sadness as she smiled at me. Oh, look at the time, Hannah said. Then she stood and handed Clarity to Gloria. The baby stirred, poking its tiny fist in the air and yawning. With the clatter of the cookies came out of the hot oven, and there was a wave of delicious smell. But Hannah didn't give me any. As far as I was concerned, having cookies so taintily close to my nose without being given a treat of any kind was a big tragedy of the day. I'll be gone for maybe an hour and a half, and Hannah told Gloria. She reached up to where she kept some toys called keys, and I heard the metallic jingling sound I associated with riding in a car. I watched alertly, torn between my desire for the car ride and my duty to stay by the cookies. You stay here, Buddy, Hannah said. Oh, and Gloria, keep the door to the cellar closed. Clarity loves to climb down any set of stairs she can find, and I had to put some rat poison out down there. Rats? There are rats, Gloria said sharply. Clarity was fully awake now, struggling in her mother's arms. Yes, this is a farm. Sometimes we get rats. It's okay, Gloria. Just keep the door closed. I picked up a little anger in Hannah and watched her anxiously for signs of what was going on. As was typically in situations like this, though the strong emotions I sensed were never explained, people are like that. They have complex feelings that are just too difficult for a dog to comprehend. When she left, I followed Hannah out to her car. No, you stay here, Buddy, she said. Her meaning was clear, particularly when she slid inside the car and shut the door on me, her keys clinking. I wagged, hoping she might change her mind. But once the car was headed down the driveway, I knew there would be no car ride for me that day. I slipped back inside through the doggy door. Clarity was in her special chair, the one with the tray in front of it. Gloria was hunched over trying to spoon some food into Clarity's mouth, and Clarity was mostly spitting it back out. I tasted Clarity's food and didn't blame her one bit. Often Clarity was allowed to put small bits of food into her mouth with her own hands. But when it came to a really bad stuff, her mother and Hannah still had to force it on her with a spoon. "Buddy," Clarity gurgled, slapping her hands against the tray in happiness. Some of the food splattered on Gloria's face, and she stood up abruptly, making a harsh noise. She wiped her face with a towel and then glared at me. I lowered my eyes. "I can't believe she just lets you wander around like your own place," she muttered. I never had any hope that Gloria would ever give me a cookie. "Well, not while I'm in charge," she said. She regarded me silently for several seconds and then sniffed. "Okay, come here," she ordered. I obediently followed her over to the cellar door. She opened it. "And you go. Go." I figured out what she wanted and went through the doorway. A small carpet area at the top of the stairs was just big enough for me to turn around and look at her. "You stay," she said, shutting the door instantly. It was much darker. The steps that led down were wooden and made a squeaky noise as I descended. I wasn't down in the cellar very often and could smell new and interesting things down there that I wanted to explore, and maybe eat. Wow, that is so sad. Oh my gosh. Alrighty, so I'm going to start reading chapter 2, guys. This one's going to be a little bit of a bigger chapter, so. Okay. Chapter 2. Though the light in the cellar was very dim, the walls and corners were rich with thick, damp odors. Wooden shelves held musty bottles, and a cardboard gone soft in the sides was filled with clothing that held a marvelous jumble of smells from the many children who had been on the farm over the years. I inhaled deeply, remembering running through summer grass and plunging through winter snow. Despite the wonderful scents, though, there was nothing I was interested in eating. After the time I heard the easily identifiable sound of Hannah's car coming up the driveway. With a click, the door at the top of the cellar stairs opened. "Buddy, come here right now," Gloria snapped. I hastily made for the stairs, but I stumbled in the gloom and in a pain hit my left rear leg sharp and deep. I stopped, looking up at Gloria, who was framed in the light of the open doorway. I wanted her to tell me that whatever just hurt me, it was okay. I said, "Come," she said more loudly. I whimpered a little as I took my first step, but I knew I had to do what she said. I kept the weight off the leg and then seemed to help. "Would you come on?" Gloria took 2 steps down, reaching for me. I didn't crave having Gloria's hand on my fur, and I knew she was mad at me for something, so I tried to shy away from her. "Hello," Hannah called, her voice echoing upstairs. I put more speed into my gait now, and my leg felt a little better. Gloria turned, and she and I entered the kitchen together. "Gloria," Hannah said. She put down her paper bags, and I went over to her wagging. "Where's Clarity?" I finally got her down for a nap. "What were you doing in the cellar?" I was looking for some wine." "You were? Downstairs?" Hannah put her hands down, and I sniffed it, smelling something sweet. I was so glad she was home. "Well, I thought wine cellar." "Oh, well, no, I think we have some. It's in the cabinet under the toaster." Hannah was looking at me, and I wagged. "Buddy, are you limping?" I sat. Hannah took a few steps back and called me, and I went over to her. Does he look like he's limping to you? Hannah asked. How would I know? Gloria said. My expertise is children, not dogs. Buddy, did you hurt your leg? I wagged with a sheer pleasure of her attention. Hannah leaned down and kissed me between my eyes. I gave her a lick right back. She went over to the kitchen counter. Oh, you didn't want any cookies, she asked. I can't have cookies, Gloria said scornfully. I had never before heard the word cookies said so negatively. Hannah didn't say anything, but I heard her give a tiny sigh as she began to put away the things she'd brought home in her sacks. Sometimes she'd have a bone when she came home, but I could smell that today she hadn't been able to find any. I watched her alertly through, just in case I was wrong. I don't want Clarity to have any either, Gloria said after a minute. She's chubby enough. Hannah laughed and stopped. You're serious? Of course I'm serious. After a moment, Hannah turned back to the grocery sacks. Okay, Gloria, she said quietly. A few days later, Gloria was sitting in the sun in the front yard with her knees drawn up close to her chest. She had small balls of fur between her nose and was touching them with a tiny stick coated with an eye-watering chemical. Each toe was darker after she was done with. The smell was powerful. It overcame the strange taste in my mouth, which otherwise had become stronger and more persistent with each passing day. Clarity had been playing with a toy, but was on her feet and tottering away. I looked over at Gloria, who had her eyes narrowed at her toes, and the very tip of her tongue sticking out of her mouth. Clarity, don't wander off, Gloria said absently. In the several days that Clarity had been on the farm, she had gone from having a slow, wobbling walk that dropped down to all fours every so often to be able to take off at the near run. She was headed purposefully towards the barn, and I followed right behind her, wondering what I should do. The horse named Troy was in the barn when Ethan was alive. He sometimes rode Troy, which I didn't approve of very much because horses are not reliable like dogs. One time when I was young, Ethan fell off of a horse. Nobody ever fell off a dog. Hannah didn't ever ride Troy. We went into the barn, Clarity and I heard Troy snort at our presence. The air was filled with a smell of hay and horse. Clarity marched right over to the kettle where Troy stayed when he was in the barn. Troy moved his head up and down in the quick jerk and snorted again. Clarity reached the bars of the gate and gripped them in her tiny hands. Horsey, she said excitedly. Her little knees were pumping up and down with glee. I could feel the rising tension coming off of Troy. The horse didn't care for me much, and I had noticed from the previous visits that when I was in the barn, it made him nervous. Clarity reached her hands through the bars to try to pet Troy, who shied away. I went up to Clarity and touched my nose to her, letting her know that if she wanted to pet something, there was nothing better than a dog. Her eyes were wide and bright, and her mouth was open, and she was panting excitedly, her eyes not leaving Troy. A loop of chain kept a gate shut, but as Clarity leaned against the bars, the slack in the loop made for a gap. I knew what she was going to do before she did it. Making noises, she slid sideways along the gate up to the gap and then pressed her way through it, right into Troy's kettle. Troy was pacing now, back and forth, swaying his head and snorting. His eyes were wide open, and his hoofs seemed to be hitting the ground harder and harder. I could smell his agitation. It popped to the surface of his skin like sweat. Horsey, Clarity said. I put my head into the gap and pushed hard, trying to squeeze through. As I did, I felt the pain in my left rear leg again, but I ignored it and concentrated on getting my shoulders through, and then my hips. Panting, I made it into the kennel as Clarity started forward, her hands raised up at Troy, who was stumbling and snorting. I could see he was going to step on the baby. I was afraid of the horse. He was big and powerful, and I knew that if he hit me with one of his hoofs, it would hurt me. My instincts were telling me to back up and get out of there. But Clarity was in danger, and I had to do something. Now, I swallowed my fear and barked at that horse. With all the fur I possessed, I tightened my lips, showing my teeth, and lunged forward, putting myself between Clarity and Troy. Troy was making a harsh screaming sound, lifting his front hoof briefly off the ground. I backed up, still barking, pushing Clarity into the corner with my hips. Troy's pacing was more frantic, and his hooves were striking the ground close to my face, and I kept snarling and snapping my teeth at him. "Buddy, buddy," I could hear Hannah calling frantically from outside the barn behind me. I felt Clarity's little hand dig into my fur to keep me from knocking her over. The horse might strike me, but I was going to stay between him and the baby. A hoof whistled past my ear, and I bit at it. Then Hannah was rushing in. "Troy." She unfastened the loop of the chain and spun the gate open, and the horse bolted past her and through the big double doors and out into the big yard. I could feel the fear and anger in Hannah now. She reached down and scooped up Clarity in her arms. "Oh, honey, you're okay, she said. Clarity clasped her hands together, grinning. "Horsey," she exclaimed happily. Hannah's other hand came down and touched me, and I was relieved to know I wasn't in any trouble. "Yes, the big horsey, you're right, honey, but you shouldn't be in here." When we were back outside, Gloria came up to us. She was walking strangely, taking steps as if her feet hurt her. "What happened?" she asked. Clarity went into Troy's stall. She could have been. It was terrifying. "Oh, no. Oh, Clarity. That was so bad." Gloria reached out and grabbed Clarity, hugging the baby to her chest. "Oh, you must never, ever frighten Mommy like that again. Do you understand?" Hannah folded her arms. "I'm not sure how she got up here without you knowing. She must have followed the dog. I see." Hannah still felt angry to me, and I lowered my head a little, reflecting, feeling remorseful. "Would you take her?" Gloria asked, holding Clarity out of my arm's length. The pain in my hips stayed with me. After that, not so bad. That was hobble, but a dull ache that never left. There was nothing wrong with the leg, though, nothing to lick. At dinner, I liked to stay under the table and clean up when things went on the floor. When there were lots of children around, I could usually count on several morsels, but at that time, there was just Clarity, and as I've said, her food tasted rift through naturally. If some fell, I ate it anyway. I was lying under there a few nights after the incident with the horse when I noticed that Hannah seemed a little nervous and anxious. I sat up and nosed her, but when she petted me, it was in a distract fashion. "Did the doctor call for me, Bill?" Gloria asked. "No," I said. "I would tell you." I don't know why men do that. They ask for your number and then they don't call. Gloria, I was thinking about something. "What?" "Well, first, I want you to know that even though you and Henry you're no longer together and you never got married, you're the mother of my grandchildren. And I will always consider you family, and you are always welcome here." "Thank you," Gloria said. "I feel the same way. And I'm sorry Henry's job has him overseas. He told me he's still looking for a position back here, so he can spend more time with Clarity." When I heard her name, I looked over at Clarity's little feet, which were all I could see of her under the table. She was kicking them, which was how she acted when she was feeding herself her yucky dinner. When Gloria was feeding her, Clarity would twist and turn in the chair. Meanwhile, I know that you're hoping to get your singing career back on track, Hannah continued. Right? Well, having a baby hasn't exactly helped that. I still haven't gotten rid of this weight. That's why I was thinking, what if Clarity stayed here? There was a long stillness when Gloria spoke again. Her voice was very quiet. What do you mean? Rachel will be back in town next week, and when the school year starts, Cindy will be off by 4 o'clock every day. Between us and all Clarity's cousins, we could give her so much attention, and you'd have a chance to pursue your singing. And like I said, anytime you wanted to come stay with me, we have plenty of room. You'd have so much freedom. So that's what this is about, Gloria said. Sorry. I wondered inviting me here, telling me I could stay as long as I wanted. Now I know. So Clarity would live with you. And then what? I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Gloria. And then Henry sues in child support and I'm left with nothing? What? No, that's the furthest thing. I know everyone in your family thinks I was trying to trap Henry into asking me to marry him. But I've met plenty of men who do just fine. I don't need to trap anyone into anything. No, Gloria, no one ever said that. With a lurk, Gloria stood up. I knew it was something like this. Everyone acting so nice. I could feel the anger coming out of her and made sure I was well away for her feet. Suddenly, Clarity's chair was shaking back and forth and her little feet vanished up into air. I'm packing. We're leaving, Gloria. I heard Clarity give off a wail as Gloria stomped up the stairs. Clarity hardly ever cried. The last time I could remember was when she crawled into her garden and pulled a green vegetable off the plant that was so pungent it made my eyes water worse than Gloria's toes. Though I could plainly tell it was something no one should ever eat. Clarity stuck the thing in her mouth and gummed it. She had a real look of surprise on her face when that happened, and she cried just like she was crying now, part shock, part hurt, part anger. Hannah cried too after Gloria and Clarity drove off. I tried to comfort her as best as I could, sitting with my head in her lap, and I'm pretty sure it helped, though she felt very sad when she fell asleep in her bed. I didn't really understand what had happened other than Gloria and Clarity leaving, but I figured I would see them both again. People always came back to the farm. I slept on Hannah's bed in which I started doing shortly after Ethan died. For the time she would hold me at night, and sometimes she'd cry then too. I knew why she was crying. She missed Ethan. We all missed Ethan. The next morning when I jumped down off Hannah's bed, something felt like it broke in my left hip, and I couldn't help it. I let out a yelp of pain. Buddy, what is wrong? Oh my gosh. Buddy, what is it? What happened? What's wrong with your leg? I couldn't feel her fear and licked her palm in apology for upsetting her, but I wasn't able to put my left rear leg on the floor. It hurt too much. We're going to the vet, buddy. You'll be okay, Hannah said. We made our slow, careful way out of the car, me hopping on 3 legs and doing my best to look as if it wasn't hurting, so I wouldn't make Hannah any more sad. Though I was a front seat dog. She put me in the back, and I was grateful because it was easier to crawl up there than to try to jump up front with only 3 legs working. As she started the car and drove off, I had that awful taste in my mouth again. Horrible as ever. And that is the end of chapter 2, guys. I will see you guys in chapter 3. Thank you guys for listening.